Right now, 51 years of sulfur is venting into the dark above Washington state. And the mountain it's coming from has already done this before, twice, without a single eruption. Sherman Crater breathes tonight the way it has breathed every night since March of 1975. From below the summit of Mount Baker, the steam rises in the cold air and disappears into the black sky above the North Cascades. Most of the 250,000 people living in the valleys below are asleep. Most of them have no idea what is sitting above them. Not lava, not ash. Something slower, something heavier, and something far more likely to actually reach them. Geologists call it a lahar, cohesive clay-rich lahar, a wall of liquefied mountain, superheated water, and pulverized glacier ice moving at highway speed down a river valley. And Mount Baker has launched exactly that twice in the last 200 years, both times without ever erupting. That is where the story begins. Not with fire, with rot. The United States Geological Survey has ranked Mount Baker the 14th most dangerous volcano in America. Category Very High Threat. It is the second most thermally active volcano in the entire Cascade Range, trailing only Mount St. Helens, the mountain that in 1980 killed 57 people and sent ash into 16 states. Baker has not done that. Not yet. What Baker has done is something more insidious, more patient, and in some ways more dangerous than a sudden eruption. For the past half-century, it has been quietly dissolving itself from the inside out. The mechanism is sulfuric acid. Fumarole gases, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, magmatic gases rising from something deep and hot below the crater floor, have been reacting with the andesite rock walls of Sherman Crater for 51 years, converting solid volcanic rock into soft, water-saturated clay. The crater sits at 9,465 feet. The glacier above it has partially melted back from the thermal heat rising through the floor. What was once a cap of ice is now, in places, exposed bare rock. The mountain is not exploding. It is dissolving. And when enough of it dissolves, it does not need an eruption to move. It only needs a trigger. In March of 1975, the world got a glimpse of what a trigger looks like. Local observers near Sherman Crater looked up and saw the steam plume change. It had always been white. Now it was dark. Rock. Magmatic gas. The United States Geological Survey began measuring what was happening, and what they found over the following weeks rewrote the hazard map of the entire North Cascades. Heat flux at the crater jumped from 2 megawatts to 30 megawatts, a 10-fold increase, almost overnight. Fumarolic gas velocity was clocked at 268 kilometers per hour, 167 miles per hour, screaming out of vents in the crater floor. Fumarolic temperatures spiked above 130 degrees Celsius, superheated well past boiling with carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and magmatic gases streaming straight up from something rising underneath. By fall of 1975, the glacier inside Sherman Crater had melted back to 3 times its normal snow-free area. An acidic crater lake appeared where there had been solid ice. New fumaroles opened that nobody had known existed. Puget Sound Energy did something they had never done before. They preemptively drew down Baker Lake Reservoir, lowering the water level to create empty capacity, a buffer designed to absorb an incoming lahar if the mountain let go. It was the first preventive volcanic drawdown in Cascades history. Local authorities quietly briefed residents of Concrete, Washington on evacuation routes. And then the mountain went back to sleep, sort of. Dave Tucker directs the Mount Baker Volcano Research Center at Western Washington University. He has spent his career on this mountain. His assessment is not ambiguous. The steam rising from Mount Baker today signifies the volcano will erupt eventually. And when Mount Baker erupts, crumbles, or both, the Skagit Valley may be in serious trouble. Crumbles. That is the word he chooses. Not erupts. Crumbles. Between 1977 and 2007, geologist Juliette Kreider of Western Washington University ran a gravity survey across the crater. She found something that should stop you cold. A gravity increase of 1,800 microgals, plus or minus 300. Her interpretation. The magma that intruded in 1975 rose, stalled, and cooled as a dike without erupting. It is still there, sitting below the crater, sitting below the acid-soaked clay walls. Among the Cascade volcanoes, she has said, it is one of the more active. The magma did not leave. It has been waiting. This is not speculation. This is geology measured in the rock. Now consider what already exists above those valleys. More than 1 cubic kilometer of glacier ice caps the mountain. The east wall of Sherman Crater is saturated with clay, the product of 50 years of acid hydrothermal alteration. A piece of that wall detaches. It does not need an eruption. It needs a small intrusion, a nearby Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, or simple gravity. The wall goes. It slams into the glacier. Rock becomes water. Water becomes a wave. And the wave has somewhere to go. Approximately 6,600 years ago, it went there. Geologists call it the Deming mudflow. Sherman Crater partially collapsed. 240 million cubic meters of altered rock and ice tore down the Middle Fork Nooksack River, reaching depths of 100 meters near the source. It ran more than 29 kilometers, 18 miles, all the way to Bellingham Bay. The deposit is still there, 30 feet thick. The town of Deming, Washington, population 330, is built directly on top of it. And now comes what may be the most alarming number in this entire story. In 2024, the USGS published Scientific Investigations Report 2024-5133, a simulation of a modern lahar at Deming scale, 260 million cubic meters. The numbers are clinical. Initial speed, 50 meters per second, 180 kilometers per hour, 112 miles per hour. At 35 kilometers downstream, the flow is still 12 to 25 meters deep. Still moving at 48 kilometers per hour. Time to reach Everson, Washington, 1 hour and 38 minutes. Time to reach Linden, population 16,500, 2.5 hours. Follow the geography and the scale of what that means. Glacier, Maple Falls, Kendall, Deming, Nooksack Corner, Everson. At Everson, something unique in North American volcanic hazard happens. The lahar reaches a drainage divide. Part of it continues west through Ferndale, population 16,430, and into Bellingham Bay, at the edge of a city of 95,860 people. But part of it does something that no other volcanic lahar pathway in the United States can do. Part of it jumps north, into the Sumas River, across the town of Sumas, and across the Canadian border into Abbotsford, British Columbia. Population, 170,000. This is not hypothetical. This is geometry. This is the only place in North America where a United States volcanic lahar pathway crosses into another country. The USGS lead on Baker's hazard assessment, Mary Benice, has said the purpose of that assessment is to communicate the current state of the science in more understandable language. The science is understandable. And what the science describes is a corridor of exposure that 250,000 people call home, most of whom have never been told what is above them. But the threat is not only what flows down the Nooksack. Upper Baker Dam is 312 feet of concrete holding 285,000 acre-feet of water. A lahar into Baker Lake would create a displacement wave capable of cascading into Lower Baker Dam and down the Skagit River, threatening Concrete, Sedro-Woolley, and Mount Vernon, an additional 50,000 people. Lake Whatcom provides drinking water for 120,000 residents, roughly half of Whatcom County. A Nooksack lahar would send a turbidity plume capable of overwhelming water treatment for weeks. The Trans-Canada Rail Line, Highway 1 and Interstate 5, all crossing the Nooksack, lie directly in the path. If you want to understand what this corridor looks like when water goes the wrong way, you do not need to imagine. You can ask a 58-year-old dairy farmer on Sumas Prairie. He milks 220 Holsteins on reclaimed lake bed 3 kilometers north of the Canadian border. His grandfather helped drain Sumas Lake in 1924. In November 2021, during an atmospheric river storm, he watched a 10-foot wall of Nooksack River water come north across the border, through a drainage ditch that was supposed to direct water south. He lost 40 cows. 3 months of production. Gone. And that was rain. The 2021 flood caused more than $2 billion in damage across the region. It evacuated 1,100 properties. It displaced 3,300 people. It killed approximately 500 dairy cattle. It dumped 7.5 million liters of milk. It severed Highway 1 and the Trans-Canada Rail line for a week. A researcher at the University of the Fraser Valley told that farmer afterward something he has not forgotten. This was not even a volcano, they said. Imagine if it were. Imagine if it were. Let these numbers sit with you. A tenfold jump in heat flux recorded in weeks. Fumarolic gas at 268 kilometers per hour. 1,800 microgals of stalled, trapped magma sitting below the crater since 1977, confirmed by gravity survey, confirmed in the rock. Temperatures at the fumaroles exceeding 130 degrees Celsius. 30 feet of ancient lahar deposit directly under the homes of Deming, Washington. A simulated modern lahar traveling at 180 kilometers per hour at the leading edge. 1 hour and 38 minutes to Everson. 2.5 hours to Linden. 120,000 people drinking from Lake Whatcom. 23,000 dairy cattle grazing on what used to be a lake, on ground that drains north across an international border. 250,000 lives inside the exposure corridor. And monitoring the entirety of this, 2 seismometers, 0 continuous GPS stations. 2 and 0. Sherman Crater has already partially collapsed twice in recorded history, in 1843 and again in 1891, both times without any eruption at all. So the question is not whether the mountain is capable. The question is why we are waiting to find out what the next trigger looks like before we watch it more carefully. Nate Stevens at the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network has given the honest answer. There is nothing we can do to control these natural forces, he has said. The best thing we can do is monitor and be prepared. Tonight, Sherman Crater is doing what it has done every night for 51 years. Venting sulfur into the cold dark above the North Cascades. The 1,800 microgals of trapped magma sit in silence a few kilometers below the ice. The Deming deposit is still 30 feet thick under the houses of a town built on top of the last time this happened. The east wall is still dissolving, 1 acid molecule at a time, 1 night at a time. The gravity anomaly in the rock below the crater has not moved. The clay is not getting stronger. And 3 kilometers north of the border, on reclaimed lake bed that was once a lake, 23,000 dairy cattle are still grazing in the dark. Downhill. From a mountain that has done this before. And will do it again. The only question is when.